Sendai was a religious organization originally known as the Congregation of the Blessed. Michio Shigesa, who founded the religion prior to the war, was a greedy and arrogant man. As such, he was murdered during the era of turmoil that followed the war, resulting in a takeover of the Congregation of the Blessed that ended with the organization being renamed Senri. A young woman known as the Oracle of Revelation served as their pontiff. Ultimately, the chaos surrounding Senri was quelled in 1951 by individuals such as Shugo Takashiro, and the religion was disbanded due to the death of the usurper. The remnants hadn't caused any trouble since.
そうか。わざわざすまなかったな、高城。
何？このくらいのことだったら協力は惜しまないさ。
I was speaking to none other than the man who'd been right at the front and center of that very incident, Shugo Takashiro. He moved away from Tokyo and was currently living in Zishi, Kanagawa. Yeah! Yeah! If that's who I think it is, you fucking better introduce me ASAP. Senri, huh? I now had a general idea of what had happened 6 years ago. I'd only heard Takashiro's side of the story. As such, I still didn't know too much about Senri themselves. Luckily, there was someone who could fill in the gaps for me. Poured over the name Takashiro had given me. It's like I just have to ask for the details when we met up. Yukiko lounged against the wall in her room. Her art supplies for school lay next to her. She'd been staring at them for a while now, not so much as even entertaining another thought in the meantime. Her oil paints were all but unused, while their tubes were as good as new, minus a few dents here and there. In contrast, the bristles of her paintbrush were hard as a rock. She must have failed to clean it right after using it for the first time. That's another thing to ask Togisaka about next time, huh?
So ne.
Yukiko nodded. Her wooden palette was also adorned with a tiny clump of hardened paint. A drop of red stuck out like a sore thumb on its otherwise brown surface. Yukiko figured it'd be best if she cleaned that as well. But isn't the paint absorbed into the wood by now?
Togisaka-san no wa katamatta enogu ga takusan notte ita you na kiga suru kedo.
In that case, perhaps it was best to leave it alone. Yukiko picked up a thin metal spatula. This is called a palette knife, isn't it?
これで消せるのかしら?
It reflected the room's lights as brilliantly as a polished mirror, probably since it'd never been used before. Looks really sharp.
そんなことないわ。先は丸いし、ただのヘラよ。
Yukiko poked her finger on it as a test, but the knife was too dull to do more than dent her skin. Satisfied, she put it back in her box.
Yukiko, ちょっといい?
Just then, her musings were interrupted by the call of her mother. Yukiko instinctively rose to her feet in response, quickly finding Huyumi in the living room.
何? ちょっとだけお願いがあるんだけどさ。
There it was. There was that begging tone. Nothing good ever happened when her mother started talking like that. Still, that didn't mean Yukiko could simply ignore her. Need to repay her for all she's done to raise you. Yukiko let out a quiet sigh and sat down across from Huyumi.
何?
She tried bracing herself for whatever was to come.
実はさ、もうすぐ年の暮れでしょ? うちの保育所も人手が足りなくなるのよね。
Yukiko could tell she already didn't like where this was going.
それで? お願い! お友達連れて手伝いに来て.
Huyumi bowed to her daughter. Of course, to be something like this.
でも、母さん。
Yukiko Kayahara has no friends. She had no choice but to agree with that assessment.
私、友達いないし。予想通りの返事。
Huyumi slumped in defeat across the table.
だから。
Sorry for being such a worthless daughter.
でも昨日は部活に入ったって楽しそうに話してたじゃない。美術部だっけ? でも、まだ友達なんていないし。でも、誘われたんでしょ? それはそうだけど。
That didn't mean that they could call each other friends just yet.
よし、わかった。
Huyumi raised her head.
こっちの手伝いとかはいいから、その子たちと必ずお友達になりなさい。え?
Yukiko's eyes widened.
お友達になりたいんでしょ? でも、そんなの簡単よ。私たち友達だよねって聞いてごらんなさいな。
Huyumi smiled. But what if they say no? Yukiko shook her head. Much as she wanted to make friends, she was terrified of rejection. Then you won't have a place there anymore, will you? The thought chilled her to the bones. She hated it. She didn't know if she could take that kind of rebuff.
Oide, Yukiko.
Yukiko obediently circled around the table to Huyumi's side.
Honto, bukiyou na ko.
And with that, her mother hugged her.
Datte, watashi wa...
She could feel Huyumi's warmth melting into her.
Mada sonna koto iu no, kono ko wa.
Huyumi gave Yukiko a playful whack on the head.
Datte, watashi datte ne, sugoku bukiyou dattan dakara.
Her voice had a tinge of vulnerability behind it.
Kawarou to omoeba, ikura demo kawareru n dakara. Demo, muri shinai de, jibun no peースでね。まずは自分から話しかけることを試してごらん。そして、年末までにきちんとお友達になって、お手伝いしてくれると母さん嬉しいな。
Man, I love Huyumi. She's so sweet.
それでは兄さん、行ってきます。
Yukiri, wearing a coat over her uniform, laid the morning paper on the table.
ああ、気をつけてな。
今日は帰りに病院へ寄るので、少し遅くなるかもしれません。
そうか。わかった。
Yukiri departed with her bag in hand. I set down my coffee and opened the paper. The local news had an article with a photo and everything about the new 100-yen coins that go into circulation starting 2 days from now. They'd only had 100-yen bills up until this point, which tended to create tons of stuffed wallets. Not that I'd ever had the luxury of knowing. Still hadn't even seen those new 5,000-yen bills they'd come out with last summer. Man, I'm just bumming myself out. Thus, I closed the paper and checked the front page. Senri revived. 6 years silence broken. Those bombastic letters practically leapt off the page. The article didn't say too much about the homicide itself beyond the victim being a believer. However, there was still some new information to be gleaned as well, such as how, apparently, the remnants of Senri had regrouped and formed a new organization known as the Blessed Congregation a while back. It also went on to say that Masaki Itase was one of their followers, while the congregation's representative had issued a statement declaring that the reasons for her murder were a mystery to them. The Blessed Congregation, huh? It seemed like the name was a throwback. It was closer to the Congregation of the Blessed than Senri's predecessor. Still, none of this guaranteed that they had any involvement with the case. Personally, I was of the mind that newspapers should just report the facts, plain and simple, so the emphasis on Senri's name came off as inflammatory. My musings were interrupted by the ringing of the phone. Got up and answered it.
はい、もしもし。時坂ですが。
柳沼です。昨日の件で話がありますので。
なんだか俺が被疑者みたいな言い方だ。
まさか。まだあなたを捕まえる予定はありませんよ。
そいつはどうも。
合わせる人もいるので早めにお願いします。それでは。
He hung up as soon as he'd finished saying his piece. Bastard. Then again, that was how I preferred it anyway. Long phone conversations with that guy weren't exactly my idea of fun. Still, couldn't help but wonder who he wanted to introduce. He wouldn't have phrased it that way if he wouldn't have phrased it that way. Oh, Jesus. He wouldn't have phrased it the way he had if he had already known them. So, someone connected to the case, perhaps? I took the train over to the MPD. For the time being, I had to take the Chuo line to Tokyo Station in order to reach Kasamigaseki. Unfortunately, there were plans underway to extend the Marunouchi subway line over to Shinjuku, which would make traveling to the MPD a hell of a lot easier in the future. Seeing they'd also have a stop in Ginza by this Sunday, not that I ever had a reason to go there. At any rate, going to the CID Section 1 was top priority for now. CID was the same labyrinth of desks as always. There I found a visitor already waiting at the reception area. Specifically, a suited woman dragging on a cigarette was seated atop the sofa. Yeah? Though I'd never seen her before, I could tell from a glance that she meant business. Yeah? Yeah! The woman looked up at me. Red eyes, silver hair. An empty left sleeve. Goddamn right. I see. She's.
青木浩二さんですね。
Goddamn right. That was the name of the contact Takashiro had provided.
当時でいい。時坂レイジ。
俺も0時で構わんよ。
I sat on the sofa opposite hers and whipped out a smoke.
俺の名前は高城から聞いたのか。
いや、ここに来てから聞いた。
Doji slid a matchbox from her end of the table over to me.
気にするな、時坂。
So she went with my surname, huh? Oh well, makes no difference really.
ヤギ沼に呼ばれた口だろう。
I puffed out some smoke while awaiting a response.
ああ、しばらくの間典型会を追っていた。
探偵か？
いや、それは友人に任せてある。私はただのジャーナリストだ。
I spewed more smoke with my words.
とはいえフリーでね。顧客が喜ぶようなものを追っていないせいか、ろくな稼ぎになってはいないが。
その辺は探偵も同じだな。収入が安定していることなんて稀だからな。
挨拶するのは構いませんが、話を勝手に進めないでくださいね。
Fuck you. Aginuma came over with some documents in hand.
貴様らが遅いからだ。
Get his ass. Doji popped a new cigarette between her lips.
こちらも一つの事件にずっと関わっていられるほど
だから外部の人間を使うか。人手不足もここに極まれりだな。
こちらの台所事情まで心配される言われはありません。
Holy shit, you can cut this attention with a knife.
とりあえず昨日から今日までで新たに判明したことを教えてくれないか。
I chimed in before things got ugly. This was no time for passive-aggressive warfare, much as it was clear these two got along like cats and dogs.
事件自体に進展は特にありませんよ。
ないのかよ。
使えない連中だな。
典型会がどのようにこの件に関わってくるのかが。
Aginuma ignored Toji's quip.
例の土人形が典型会と何らかの関わりがあるのではないかと疑いましたが、千里鏡も含めてそのようなものは使っていないようです。
上園真由と典型会の関連性は？
一通り調べましたがまだ不明です。
何も分かっていないのと同じだ。
Toji stubbed out her cigarette and got up.
典型会について調べればよいのだろう。
でしたら彼を連れて行ってください。
Aginuma stopped Toji and pointed to me before she could leave.
勝手にしろ。
Toji left those final words before strutting out. That was perfectly fine with me, considering it didn't look like I'd be learning anything here.
では俺も。
なあ、そうでした先輩。
Aginuma stopped me as well.
なんだ？
上園真由事件の時の被疑者ですが、糸瀬瑞希殺害には関われないという証拠が出ました。
そうか。
I was right then. Someone else had to be the culprit. Toji was waiting for me outside.
何を話していた？
犯人の手がかりがゼロになったということだよ。
相変わらずだな、警察というのは。
相当嫌っているようだな。
Though I couldn't tell if it was the police or Yaginuma she hated.
昔から警察とは敵対していたからな。
Made sense. Takashiro did mention that she used to be part of a criminal syndicate that was based in Ueno. That was all in the past now, none of it my concern.
今の典型会を調べるんだったら、その本拠に乗り込む方が早いか。
I steered the conversation back on topic.
典型会の本部は国分寺にある。どうやら上野にあった千里鏡の本部が炎上した際、
6年前の事件の時に主だった幹部はいなくなったんだろう。
典型の会だった頃の幹部がまとめているようだな。名を織部時弘という。千里鏡の頃は失脚していたようだが。
こうか不幸か。千里鏡事件には巻き込まれなかったということか。
そのようだ。私も最近まで名前を知らなかったからな。
それじゃあまずは国分寺か。中央線で行くか。
そうしよう。
Bro. Nah, I just gotta stop and admire it. Like, bro. It's Toji. That little smile. Oh. Bro. I'm feeling happy as shit right now, man. Toji and I rode the Chuo line to Kunitachi Station, took a short walk from the north exit over to Kokubunji. The Blessed Congregation's headquarters were situated amidst a plain surrounded by paddy fields. Though probably quiet and serene on a regular day, the building's perimeter was currently surrounded by a crowd of news vehicles and reporters. Soji stopped a good length away from the horde, with me quickly following suit. That was the approximate distance from here to Misaki Itose's apartment. Thus, there was a good chance she'd worked at this place. Though maybe worked wasn't the right word for it. Soji muttered after scanning the reporters. Sounded like her life as a journalist was more tumultuous than I'd initially believed. However, there was still no solid proof denying that either. The fact the papers weren't outright lying made things all the more annoying. Just then there was a commotion from the brigade of reporters crowded around the entrance. Camera flashes fired off like crazy when the door opened. Two middle-aged men garbed in white robes emerged from the building. Utsuki stood before a platform.
皆さんご静粛に。これより当団体代表よりお言葉があります。
Okay. Well, already looking at the uniform, seems pretty solid that she was definitely a believer. Our most recent victim. She's got the uniform on par, and she had the pendant. The reporters went silent at Utsuki's proclamation.
皆さん、私が代表の織部です。
The sound of his voice carried clearly, even though he wasn't straining it at all.
本日はお集まりいただき、誠にありがとうございます。
戦力教との関係を詳しくお聞かせください。
The reporter barked the moment a pause appeared in Orebe's speech.
戦力教の信者が多数在籍しているというのは本当ですか?
With that, the reporter started an endless onslaught of questions.
本当に戦力教絡みばかりだな。
世間の興味はそちらの方が大きいだろうからな。
It's all about headlines, baby.
読者の興味を煽るだけ煽り、肝心な部分はなおざりに。
我々は
Orebe cleared his throat.
かつて我々が属していた戦力教は愚昧なる輩によってその教義が歪められ、故に我々は典型の会より続く真なる信仰を守るため、それは戦力教によって信仰を揺らがされた哀れな信徒を救済せんがため、我々の使命は人を救い希望を与えるという本来の教義を広めることなのである。
よく言う。戦力教の時は世界の破滅を宣言していたくせに、
それが歪められていた教義なのだろう。
救われるのは信者のみということか。
よろしいか。我らが求めるはただ一つ。
Passion in Orebe's speech was palpable.
諸君らの求めに応じ、こうして会見を開いたのも、すべて信徒を守らんがためである。
I heard a car honk at that exact moment. Look in that direction revealed a shiny black automobile approaching the entrance. The reporter scurried away, allowing it to park right in front of Orebe and Utsuki. Yeah, that's one of those brand new skylines they released this year. Cost 1.2 million yen too. And these guys must have been loaded. Orebe and Utsuki tried to get in the car, only to be accosted by reporters.
今回の事件が典型会内部の問題というのは本当ですか?
それは違います。
Utsuki placed his hand on the car door and turned around.
我々が図らずも注目を浴びてしまった今回の事件。被害に遭われた方が信徒であったかは今後調査をし、改めて皆様に発表いたしたい。
Good old internal investigations. Those always turn out well. And with that, the two men entered the car. The vehicle promptly took off.
見たか、今の車。
ああ、えらく悪人面だったな。
Certainly didn't match the image of a typical believer, that was for sure.
雇われた用心棒だろうな。どんな団体でも大きくなればそういった組織との関わりは出てくる。
As certainly believed it, coming from a woman who used to be a part of one of those very organizations.
しかし、オリベがいなくなると、ここに来た意味がほぼなくなったな。
Doji watched as reporters started packing up.
内部の人間に話を聞いていかないのか。
無駄だろう。今言っても、そこいらの記者と同じとみなされる。
それもそうだな。
It seemed journalists were more used to this type of fact gathering compared to detectives. Still, this wasn't the time to be impressed. I had to do my part too. Doji and I returned to Shinjuku, where I proceeded to bring her over to my office.
悪くないところだな。
それだけが自慢だね。
I served her a cup of coarse tea.
お前は日本茶よりもコーヒーだと思っていた。
番茶は嫌いか？
そういうわけではない。
Doji sipped at her
コ
tea.
ーヒーは知り合いの店がうまいのを出してくれるからな。
But you pegged me right. God, I wish you had pegged me right anyway.
そういう店があるのはいいな。
今度教えてやるよ。
ああ。だがその前に典型会のことだ。
そうだな。しかし印象としては
私もだ。しかしオリベの言葉を鵜呑みにするわけにもいくまい。
典型会内部の問題ではないかと聞かれ否定したあたりか。
すべて事実ならば被害者としての立場をもっと表に見せてもいいはずだ。
どこかに嘘があるのか。
事件とは関係がなくても詮索されたくない何かがあるのかもしれんな。
ああ、悪いがそっちは
こっちで調べるさ。もともと私は千里教の残党を調べていたのだから。
そうだな。だが糸瀬瑞希に関してもそちらで追ってくれるか。典型会の信者だろうからその方が都合がいい。
何か分かれば知らせる。
よろしく頼む。
Doji set down her teacup and left. Sounded like she knew what she was doing. Goddamn right she does. In which case, I'd trust her to do her part while I did a bit more digging into Mayu Kamizono. Perhaps I'd even uncover ties to the blessed congregation. Just then, the phone rang. I got off the sofa and headed for the phone on my desk.
もしもし、時坂探偵事務所ですが。
Is he awake? Is Masaki awake? That was his name, right? Masaki? Ah! Yukuri trudged into the hospital. However, her march ceased just as soon as it had begun. Why did I bother coming here? It wasn't like he'd woken from his coma after all. She'd searched several flower shops until she finally found some nice flowers to leave by his bed, but they'd likely wilt before he could ever see them. Yukari shook her head. Why am I even doing this? It's not like I knew him, let alone spoke to him. Maybe because I saved him? I went through all that effort to ensure he didn't die, so I don't want that to be in vain. Is that it? In the end, she didn't know anything for sure. Still, she couldn't turn back, which is why she decided she'd just put the flowers in a vase, check up on him, then go on her way.
失礼します。
Yukari quietly entered the hospital room. That man was still sleeping. Yukari studied his face from afar for a while. He didn't appear to be in any pain. Furthermore, his chest was rising up and down at regular intervals, so his condition was probably stable. He was also getting a bit of a beard. Hardly a wonder. It had been 4 days since he'd been brought to this place after all. Come to think of it, I don't remember Reiji ever growing a beard. In hindsight, he probably shaved every single day, not that she'd ever really noticed. God, I couldn't imagine doing that. Yukari picked up the empty vase sitting on the nightstand. I'll put some water in first. After filling the vase with water from the kitchenette, she arranged the pink carnations she got from the flower store. Though they'd probably last a few days thanks to her action, she'd have to come back and get them before they wilted. After all, it'd be rather depressing to wake up to dead flowers. Yukari returned to the man's hospital room, slowly, so she wouldn't spill any water. After taking a tiny breath, she went in.
Yeah.
Yukari's head jolted upon hearing that unfamiliar voice. The man was sitting up in his bed, looking her way.
君が俺を助けてくれたのかい?
He flashed her a serene smile.
私はただ何とかしなければと思っただけです。
Yukari set the vase back down on the nightstand. Some water spilled and splashed onto its surface.
まさきさんと
Masaki Tomoyukiと言います。どこでこの名前を？
この病院の方が存じていたそうです。
そうですか。
Masaki bowed.
ありがとうございました。
Yukari nodded even though she felt terribly awkward.
どうやらまた命拾いをしてしまったようだ。
Masaki stared at the bandages wrapped around his left wrist.
随分と残念そうですね。
Yukari couldn't keep the acrimony out of her voice despite knowing she was overstepping her boundaries. Acrimony? No, I gotta Google that one. No, not the film, the word. Tell me the definition of the word. I can tell you right now, it's a Tyler Perry movie. That's what she's definitely talking about, right? Anger and bitterness. Okay. Like, obviously, I could kind of pick up on the context clues there, but nice to know for sure.
そう聞こえるかい？
ええ。あなたが亡くなったら悲しむ人がいるのではありませんか？
You'd be like,
そ
no.
ういう人に対してとても資料を書いた物言いだと思い
Don't
ま
you
す。
think there'd be anyone upset if you died? As a matter of fact, I don't think that at all.
そいつは天涯孤独の身には応えるセリフだ。
Yukari knew then and there she'd gone too far. She felt so ashamed that her throat dried up like a desert. Time just quietly dragged on by. Yukari couldn't bring herself to say another word. Took the train from Shinjuku to Nakano, and straight to Kichiki Hospital. Kahato was right by the reception desk.
山之内先生、あの患者が意識を回復したというのは本当ですか？
Masaki さんは今朝意識が戻りました。
いつ目覚めますか？
少量でしたからもうすぐだとは思いますが。
何でしょうか？
おそらく事情聴取などをなさるおつもりなのでしょう。
It was true that I wanted to question him, but even I knew it'd be safer to give the guy some breathing room first. For real? And she sure wasn't painting a flattering picture of me, was she?
くれぐれもよろしくお願いします。
Kahata left after stressing that point to me. Tomeki Masaki, huh? I had a ton to ask him, that was for sure. Hell, I'd even concluded that he was part of the key to everything that was going on. I stopped in front of Masaki's room.
この病院の方が存じていたそうです。
Oh. I heard Yukari's voice from within. What do you think of it? She did mention she'd be visiting today.
どうやらまた命拾いをしてしまった。
My hand froze just a hair's breadth away from the doorknob upon hearing a male voice say that. The way he phrased that implied he really had wanted to die.
随分と残念そうですね。
Yukari's voice had some bite to it. Seems she'd been angered by his choice of words.
そう聞こえるかい？
ええ。あなたが亡くなったら。
そいつは。
Yukari fell silent. Knowing her, she probably thought she'd crossed the line. Oh, brother. I stepped on in. There, the room's two occupants turned my way.
死ねなかったのがそんなに残念か。
I walked up to Masaki without so much as flinching. Reiji.
あなたは？
そいつの兄だよ。それと、お前さんに血を提供した人間だ。
I pointed at Yukari and gestured to my
そ
elbow.
うでしたか。それはどうもご迷惑をおかけしました。
まったくだ。
兄さん。
お前は黙っている。
I held out my hand when Yukari tugged at my
見
sleeve.
たところ、俺と同年代だと思う。生きていることを残念がるのだったら。
There are plenty of people, both on and off the battlefield, who were dealt death when they wanted to live.
最初はそのつもりでした。
Masaki smirked sadly.
お国のためなんて考えちゃいない。ただ俺は死に場所を求めて戦地に行き。
だったらどうしてその命を大切に扱おうとしないのですか？
自分のものという意識が強すぎるのかもしれない。
Masaki hung his head and pressed down on his left hand. The bandages there were a little loose, possibly because his tendons were injured. This looks like a job for Yukari.
ゆかり、あとは任せた。
兄さん。
I've been mere seconds away from losing my temper and telling him to finish the job he'd failed. God damn, Reiji. Holy fuck, bud. Yeah, no, maybe it's a good idea you kind of held back there, homie. Jesus. I knew Reiji could fucking work himself into a temper, but holy shit. Please don't grill the patient. Okay, I won't grill him. I won't interrogate him too hard. I will tell him he should have offed himself properly, but I won't, you know, interrogate him too difficultly. Like, good lord, man. Like, I get it. It was more so he's, like, getting all defensive of his sister because she's being put in this awkward position. But just be like, well, then just fucking do it properly this time, fuck ass. It's like, whoa, bud. Whoa. And so I took my leave before I did something I'd regret. Still, what exactly was it that nearly drove him past the point of no return? Several theories came to mind, but none of them seemed solid enough. Kahara approached me. Uh-oh, she looks kinda angry. There's no excuse for my behavior. I interrupted Kahara and shook my head. Knew it. It's true that I wanted answers about the incident as soon as possible. Instigating another suicide attempt wouldn't help anyone. So I'd have to save it for then, huh? Nurse called for Kahara. I watched as Kahara dashed off with the nurse. Guess I'll just wait on Yukari and head home with her. I was resting in my room after dinner, documents clutched in my hand. They concerned the clay dolls discovered in the victims' bodies. Both were composed of ordinary red clay you could find anywhere in Kanto. There were no fingerprints or the like found on them. It was hard to believe that a fetus-like clay doll would be sold in a souvenir store or anything. Thus, they were likely made for this purpose and this purpose alone. The dolls themselves were 20 centimeters long, equivalent to about a 4 to 5 month old fetus. That was just barely small enough to still fit into the average woman's abdomen. But what exactly did it signify? That the victims were pregnant? Or maybe the dolls were stuffed in to conceal that they'd been pregnant? No, that didn't add up. Though Mayo Kamizono's uterus had been severely damaged, the clay doll was found sealed outside of it. I reviewed the autopsy reports Natsume had written up for her and Mizuki Itase. On one hand, Mayo Kamizono appeared to have been a virgin. On the other, Mizuki Itase's uterus had exhibited no signs of pregnancy. It hadn't taken much work to uncover that information, meaning any attempt to hide a pregnancy would have been immediately discovered. Thus, it was probably best to assume the clay dolls had been used as ritual implements of sorts. Though that said, I had never heard of any such ritual. I entered my library. People all over the nation had been making clay dolls as per customs ever since the 17th century. Such customs were often tied to the Fushimi Inari faith, but the dolls in question were meant to be painted souvenirs. Meanwhile, the ones used in these homicides were more likely supposed to be earthen figures used in some sort of ceremony, if I had to hazard a guess. Such figurines had been around in Japan for over 10,000 years. Maybe there was some other, far more recent indigenous faith that had spawned the ones I was dealing with now. Fortunately, I couldn't imagine any records would have been left about a ritual that involved slicing open a woman's stomach and inserting a clay doll. In which case, it could have been a perversion of a similar ceremony repurposed for murder. Perhaps this is where the Blessed Congregation comes in. Maybe there was some sort of ritual in the Blessed Congregation, or senri, that involved a clay doll. There's no proof of that, of course. Still, I believed it an angle worth researching. I wonder if I should ask Toji. She did have far more experience with that organization than me, after all. Ultimately, I shook my head after realizing I was just shooting off theories into the dark. All I could really do for now was investigate Mayo Kamizono's case as per my original plan. And look into Tomoyuki Masaki, too. Kohara had said it wouldn't be long until he was discharged. Things were fine for now, since he was in a hospital. There was no guarantee that I wouldn't lose track of him once he got out. It'd leave a bad taste in my mouth if he went off on his own, only to die in a ditch somewhere. The odds of him being the killer were next to none. That said, they weren't exactly zero either. I was the one who proved he couldn't have committed the murder, so I was more aware of the potential holes in my theory than anyone. Maybe I'll have to keep an eye on him. Oba Girls Academy was currently in a break between classes. However, the students couldn't afford to kick back and relax, for they had PE next period. Thus, they took out their gym clothes and started changing.
こんな寒い時期に外で体育なんておかしいわよね。
Yeah, not in December? That's rough. Kahane grumbled as she regarded her paper-thin gym clothes.
いいじゃないですか。あまり体を動かす機会もないんですから。
Hey, yo, hey, hold up, whoa. I don't need to be seeing that. Yukari slid on her gym shorts while still wearing her skirt.
白いブルマって汚れやすいのに、採用した人は何考えてるんだろう。
そう。
That said, it was admittedly awkward how they resembled underwear from a distance. Yeah, because that's totally what I thought she was doing. I'm like, why are you dropping your drawers right now, girl? But the fabric was indeed the same as regular gym clothes. Kahane unzipped her skirt and took off her school uniform. Though the girls were indoors, it was still cold since they were in nothing but their skivvies.
鳥肌が立ってる。
Kahane promptly slid her arms through her gym shirt and donned a sweat jacket.
あれ、ユキコちゃんは着替えないの？
Yukari glanced behind her. Though Yukiko had her gym clothes out, she was stiff like a statue, still decked out in her school uniform.
今日は見学？
そういうわけじゃないけど、早く着替えないと時間なくなっちゃうわよ。
Yukiko turned away and timidly started changing.
恥ずかしかったのかな。
Kahane whispered that into Yukari's ear.
同性ばかりなのですから、そこまで気にしなくてもいいと思いますが。
ゆかりっちは気にしなさすぎだと思うけどね。
そうですか？
That's not true, is it? Kahane abruptly swiveled Yukiko's way and gasped.
どうしましたか？
おっきい。
They're huge! Yukari turned to see what Kahane was looking at. Friend's eyes were trained on Yukiko, now garbed in her gym clothes.
そうですね。
Even Yukari has to comment on it. That's how you know they're fucking hefty. My goodness. Yukari unconsciously glanced at her own chest. They were on a totally different level despite being the same age. Curious still, she snuck a peek at Kohane's chest out of the corner of her eye. Kohane's weren't much different from her own. Yukari figured that was about average for their age. She assumed hers would keep growing with time, much like Kyoko's. It was with those thoughts in mind that Yukari looked at Yukiko again. God damn it, Kohane. Why you gotta be a fucking weirdo like that? Only to see Kohane groping the poor girl.
うわー、これはずるいわ。ちょっと。
Yukiko tried to flee, but Kohane kept her tight in her grasp like a hawk seizing prey in its talons.
昔はそれほどでもなかったのに、どうしてこんなに成長したのかしら。
God, you're weird.
指動かさないで。感度も良くなってるような。
ちょっと小羽。
Yukari, feeling bad for Yukiko, chose that moment to step in.
ゆかりっちも触ってみる？
もう授業が始まってしまいますから。
Yeah, quit being a
急ぎましょう。
fucking weirdo. Yukari would be lying if she said she wasn't a little curious, but for her, school came first.
そうね。
Yukiko swiftly threw on her sweat jacket as soon as Kohane released her.
大丈夫？
A flushed Yukiko nodded.
早く行くよ。始業のベル鳴っちゃうよ。
God, I want to slap you. Kohane was marching out of the classroom, issuing orders to the beat of her own drum, like
行
always.
きましょう。貝原さん。
Frigid winds ravaged the schoolyard.
絶対おかしいわよ。こんな寒いのにジョギングだなんて。
Kohane grumbled, barely making the effort to go faster than a walking pace.
暑い季節のジョギングよりは楽ですよ。
I disagree. Listen, I used to run track, alright? And I much preferred, going to practice towards the end of the season than at the beginning, right? Listen, when we start practice up in like March, as winter was coming to a close, fuck that. Nah, it's just sucked ass. But as things came to a close in like, April and May, loved it. The warm weather, I love it. I'm also a lizard in that way. I love warm weather, right? These like 90-degree summer days, love it. I love this shit. It rules. The moment the temperatures drop below like 60 degrees outside Fahrenheit, nah, I don't like that. I don't like that. I don't play those games. So I couldn't disagree more. I'd much rather go exercise in the hot summer sun than, fucking December. Ugh, gross. At least in the cold, they warmed up the longer they ran. I mean, guess what? You step out in the summer, you're already warm. You don't need to warm up. Guess what? You're warm. End of story. You have to drink a bit more water because you're going to be sweating a whole lot, but hey, I love drinking water. Just step out, boom, you're warm. There's no warming up, you're just warm. It's great. It's amazing. Yukari glanced behind her. Yukio was trailing behind them at a slower stride. Her chest jounced? With each step she took. Did you misspell bounce, or is jounce a word I don't know? I have a no, jounce. It is a word, but it's a jounce, meaning to jolt or bounce. You just took those words and mushed them together. That's not a real word. Say jolt or bounce. You don't need to say jounce. It's not quite a jolt, but not quite a bounce. It's somewhere in between. It's a jounce. Like, no, you sound stupid. Who the fuck says jounce? Get out of here. Just fucking say bounce at that point. That pisses me off. I don't like that. Don't ever fucking say jounce to me again. Shut up. Yukari checked her own chest once more. Only to find not so much as a jiggle. On one hand, she was glad they weren't big enough to get in the way of jogging. On the other hand, she was a smidge vexed. The whistle blew, signaling the start of their break. Yukiko immediately halted in her tracks, gripping her knees as she huffed and puffed. Yukiko looked up at Yukari. Yukari smiled and crouched down to Yukiko's level. Summer, on the other hand, had marked many a day when she would go out bug hunting in Okutama and the like. Yukiko was finally catching her breath. Yukiko got up and strolled away. She's probably going to get a drink of water. In the meantime, Kohane came over to take her place. No!
Yukiko-chanが疲れているのは感性の法則が働いているからだと思うのよ。
God, you're starting to piss me off. It's one thing to like notice it at first, be like, oh wow, she got some big knockers, like true. But it constantly be like, haha, she got big boobs, right? Hey Yukari, she got big boobs, right? Hey, Yukari, I don't know if you noticed, she's got big boobs. Like, Kohane, stop, please. You're getting fucking annoying. Stop. For the love of God, stop. Yukari simply nodded, unable to affirm or deny that suggestion.